Hello and welcome, guys, to this edition of Woman to Woman. I am your host, Anntricia Bray Smith, your professional mentor and speaker. It is indeed a blessing to be here with you today as we're continuing in season 3 in our financial education series. And season 3 has been dedicated to financial education because I believe that in times such as which we're living in today, financial education is highly important. And that is one of the missing elements that we have when it comes to being able to sink or swim in today's time. That means we're either drowning further and further in debt, or we're making financial shifts in our lives so that we are transforming our financial future, regardless of the crisis that we face economically. So today, our topic is mapping out your financial plan. It's time to map out your financial plans. We've discussed why financial education is important and the benefits of having or obtaining a financial education. And we also discuss how to find your money. We discuss how to find your money. And truth be told, we're all sitting on money somewhere. We just got to know where to find it, implement the practical skills to make the exchange of services or products so that we can obtain that money. Now we're going to discuss how to map out your financial plan. And this is important. This is an important step when we're talking about financial education. I can sit back and think in the beginning phases of me really getting serious about financial literacy. I had a course, a training that I offered to the community about finances. And I went out and I ordered all this material and curriculum and things, thinking that this was going to be an exciting and successful class or course or training to offer for my community, only to find that no one showed up. I had a couple people register for the course, but life happens. And as a result of that, no one showed up for the class. I was the only one. However, that didn't stop me from really taking advantage of learning and diving more into financial literacy and getting some information and gaining that knowledge, and then actually taking the steps toward mapping out my financial plan. And I shared that with you to say this: you may be the only one. You may be the only one who is consciously thinking about your financial future. You may be the only one who is actually going to implement steps to transform your financial future. However, let me encourage you to not give up on the process. It's lonely. It is discouraging sometimes, but mapping out your financial plan is necessary. As I think back on that time when I was the only one sitting there in that room, educating myself, I think back and I wonder what would have happened? Where would I be right now? Would I still be here, sitting here, sharing with you if I had of given up because no one showed up? If I have given up on my own financial journey because I had no one to take that journey with me. And so I'm here as a witness to you to show and to testify, to be a testament of what being committed to you, being committed to your financial future can do if you just stick with the process, regardless of who shows up, regardless of who supports you, regardless of who else is consciously making the decision to improve their financial future. I wouldn't be here today, I know that, if I hadn't continued to make steps forward. And yes, it's taken me a while, but when I think about it, I didn't get into my financial situation of debt and poor spending overnight. This was a lifetime of conditioning, poor habits, environmental pressures, trying to fit in, not really understanding how my money works. So I'm not going to undo overnight what it took me 40 years to incur. But what I can do overnight and what I can do immediately is make a conscious decision that I'm going to change the direction of my financial future and begin to implement simple, small, practical changes in what I do so that I can develop new habits and that it can generate and it can begin to manifest significantly in the opposite direction of where I began. I can do that right now. All it takes is a made-up mind. So if you haven't listened to season 3, episode 1 and episode 2, I encourage you right now to stop and go back and listen to those episodes as I'm walking you step by step in a basic foundation of obtaining your financial future. And I encourage you not only to get the knowledge, but to implement the simple, easy, practical steps in the areas that applies and that can benefit you in your financial situation. Also, guys, in my book, Recreating a Better Me, it starts out chapter 1 with financial education. It can give you a more in-depth, step-by-step practical ideas that you can implement immediately to begin to shift your financial situation around. A financial education is important to provide you with the knowledge, the tools, the resources into taking the initial steps into mapping out your financial future. So, how do we map out our financial future? Well, I'm glad you asked. The first thing we need to do is take a microscopic look at our financial obligations. So I hope that you have your paper and your pencil handy so that you can begin to take notes and begin to map out what your financial obligations are. And we know that some of these financial obligations are monthly. We know that some of them are quarterly. We know some of them are annually. So you also want to specify, as you're mapping out what your financial obligations are, how often you're obligated to that financial source, okay? So say, for instance, if it's a utility bill like electricity, if it's on average $125 a month, then I know that that's electricity, $125 and monthly. So I've mapped that out. I know if it's groceries, let's say it's groceries, and some of us get our supplies at the same time. So let's say groceries and supplies, say we're spending an average of $150 a week. 150, then we know that's a week. So we put these in columns and categories. We know what that looks like because we know that this is going to come on a regularly scheduled basis. And it's going to require of us our financial resources. So we need to map that out. We need to write it down. We need to know what it looks like. This, in return, is going to be information that we're going to use later down the road once we begin to put our budgets together. Once we begin to look and see where we can find more money. Because see, we talked about in episode 2 how to find money or where to find money. And so this is just an extra step that you can take in really taking a look at it and seeing where you can find money that you may have missed from doing the work in episode 2 of season 3. Okay, so we're mapping it out. What requires our money? We're writing it down. And guys, write it down in a journal. I have a book like this that I keep in front of me. It's a financial budget journal that I picked up from my local Dollar General store. And it's actually really good. It helps me map out month by month what is taking my money and really being intentional in what that looks like. And so it's been a valuable tool as I began to map out my financial plan. And so once you have looked at what is going to require your money and how often it's going to require that amount of money from you, let's begin to write down how much money we have coming in and how often. How much money we have coming in and how often. Okay, so I can tell you already, for those of you guys who just work a 9 to 5, and that's the only income you have coming in, you're cheating yourself. And 9 times out of 10, if you're already in debt, it's not enough to make the transformation or to shift your financial future in the way that's going to make a significant impact that you probably desire for it to make. Now it can, because I know some of us have really good jobs, but the more streams of income that you can have coming in, the better off financially you're going to be in the long run, because it allows you to take some of that money and apply it into places that can really make a significant impact for you financially. So if you only have one stream of income, let's just say you work a 9 to 5 and you're bringing in $2,500 a month, then that's what you write. You write whatever that source is, your employment source, the amount, and I'm not talking about how much you make before taxes. I'm talking about after taxes that actually hits your bank account that's coming into you. And how often. Maybe you make $1,400 a week. Then that source, $1,400 weekly. If it's $2,500 a month, that source, $2,500 monthly. Maybe you're generating an average of $80 from your home-based business or from your small business. So it's that source, $80 and weekly or daily. Whatever that looks like, that's what you want to begin to map out on your paper or in your journal, which I suggest that it is in a journal. So it helps give you a close look at what you have coming in, how often, and what you have going out, and how often. And 9 times out of 10, if we're in debt, we don't have as much coming in as we have going out. And this is how we find ourselves drowning deeper and deeper in debt. This is how we find ourselves drowning deeper and deeper in debt. Because we find ourselves robbing Peter to pay Paul. We use the credit card as a source of income, which we know that it's not. It's a resource, it's a tool that we can use to help build and establish our credit. But if we're using that credit card as a source of income, then we're really doing ourselves a disservice. And we really can get ourselves into financial ruin by doing this, especially in the event that we don't have a savings or emergency fund or have a backup plan for those unexpected things that we know can and will pop up. That's going to require more and more of our money. And guys, let's just face it. When we begin to make a plan and implement a plan for transforming our financial future and getting this financial education, let's just be real about it. Things are going to come out the woodworks on us. You're going to have old debts and stuff beginning to knock at your door. Your kids are going to start acting up. You're going to pay to get them out of trouble. Your spouse, you'll find, has misused money, and you're going to take that money to make sure that something else occurs. Oh, the weather gets bad, a tree falls on your roof, you have to get your roof repaired. It's always going to be something. So don't just think that because you're starting to make changes financially, that everything is just going to be laid out for you on a bed of roses, because it's not. But what I can say is that if you commit to this process, if you commit to continue to make strides every day and implement the steps, I can tell you and I can assure you that it will pay off for you in the long run. This is not an overnight fix. And this is where most of us miss it. We look for this quick fix and thinking that everything is going to just magically disappear and we're going to be on the other side of this overnight. I tell you to give yourself 12 to 36 or 48 months to really see the manifestation of what you're doing and what you're going to gain financially by applying these steps, by getting a financial education, by being intentional with transforming your financial future. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's go back in our journal and let's look at all the credit cards we have. Let's look at all the credit cards we have. Write it down. Each credit card, write it down and write the remaining balance that's on that card right now. So remember, guys, what we're doing today is we're just mapping out our financial plan. We can't set reasonable goals. We can't set a reasonable budget. We can't do anything until we know what our financial obligations are. So write down all those credit cards. What are they? What is the remaining balance on it right now in real time? And let's look at it. Let's really look at that. Not only credit cards, but what other loans do you have? Do you have student loans? Do you have bank loans? Do you have car loans? Do you have a mortgage? Write those down and write the remaining balance you have on those right now. What about hospital bills? Many of us have medical bills that we don't even open. They come in the mail and we toss them to the side because we don't really want to look at it. Do you know that when you do that and you ignore your financial obligations, that not only are you drowning in debt because you ignore the situation, but it also negatively impacts your credit score? And let's face it, we live in a credit society. Credit is important. And the way I look at credit is that credit is your bond. It's your, it's your voice. It's your word. And if you tell me that you're going to do something, I take you at your word. I trust your word. But when you don't live up to that word, when you don't communicate with me why you haven't kept your word, that breaks down the trust between you and I. That breaks down the relationship between you and I. And it's no different with our credit. When lenders begin to look at your credit score and they begin to analyze your history, it's the same thing. They're looking at, can I trust you enough to come into this agreement with you and give you this funding and you make good on your word? That history gives the lender an idea of how trustworthy you are. And let's face it, we're all good people. We're all good people. Sometimes we're good people just caught up in bad situations because financially we were overexhausted. But there's still hope. We can really go back in and transform or make good or restore these relationships. So we want to look at all those: the credit cards, the medical bills, the loans, what we have, what the remaining balance is on that right now. Okay, now, one thing we want to do once we have all that mapped out in our journal is now we want to prioritize it. And I am a fan of the snowball effect, the snowball method. So I want you to line it up from the balance with the least, from the least balance that you owe right now in real time. You'll mark that 1 to the greatest balance. We'll mark that with the biggest number. So say I have 3 credit cards, 1 loan, and 1 mortgage. So I have a credit card with a balance right now of $250. I have a credit card right now with a balance of $1,200. I have a loan with a balance of $3,500, and say I have a mortgage with a balance of $51,000. Okay, so that's the way I'm going to prioritize that, 1 through however many I just said. Okay, so the 1 is going to be my priority to pay off first. I'm going to make the minimum balance on the rest of them. I'm going to apply all my extra money onto that $250 balance until I have it paid off. Okay, so that is the purpose for prioritizing that or categorizing that from the smallest balance to the greatest balance. Because when we begin to put together our debt repayment plan, this is the way we're going to look at it. All you're doing now is mapping it out, taking a look at it, so that when we begin to implement our debt repayment plan, it just makes it easier to come back and look at it to know where we're going to apply our money. Okay, so this is what we're doing today. We're just mapping out our financial plan, understanding what our financial obligations are, looking at those debts, and analyzing what we have coming in, what we have going out. So as you're doing this, take the time to be intentional, to really be honest with yourself. Go back into those drawers that you have, all those medical bills and other bills that's coming in that you haven't looked at, map it out so that when we come back for another episode of Woman to Woman, we can begin to set in motion a budget which includes a debt repayment plan. So do the steps. I encourage you, and I thank you for being here with me today for this edition of Woman to Woman. I am Anntricia Bray Smith, your professional mentor and speaker. Until next time.